Okay, so we are live. This is our evening edition of Stand Up Fight Back. So we'll just wait a moment so that we can get some people in our audience. And I'll get my notes up here. Okay, so let's see. Okay, so hello everybody. Glad that you can join us. We're gonna get started. So let's get going. As you may know, I am Margot Pies. I'm a scientist, an engineer, and an occasional journalist. And this is my co-host. He's just in the bottom screen, I think to the left of me. That's Carlos Marroquin. He's an amazing grassroots organizer here in California. And you're watching our weekly Sunday show, Stand Up, Fight Back, where we discuss strategy and analysis for the progressive movement. We simulcast on Facebook and YouTube, so please share us with your friends and please subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss an episode. Today we have a really special guest. His name is Elias Newman, and he's with the organization IfNotNow. So Elias, it's so wonderful to have you here. We're wondering if you could talk to us a little bit about what IfNotNow is, first of all, and then we can get into talking all about what your organization has been up to in the Georgia Senate race.
Thank you so much, Margot and Carlos, for having me. It's a pleasure to be here with you all tonight. And yeah, I'm calling in from Georgia. I have a little bit of an echo. Is there any way, Margot, to change that just before I get started?
I don't know. That's probably on your end because I don't.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, sorry. Hopefully it clears up.
Cool. I'll turn it down a bit and it should help. All right. Hi, everyone. Take two. I'm calling in from Georgia. The movement that I'm a volunteer with, IfNotNow, we're here doing some election work. And yeah, to back up a bit, IfNotNow is a movement led by young Jews like myself. And we are trying to move our community, our Jewish community, to end our community's support for Israel's military occupation, while at the same time fighting, for ourselves and fighting against anti-Semitism and white nationalism that affects us here and affects us all over the world. And our movement started about 5 years ago or so during one of the horrible Gaza wars where so many civilians were being killed. And Jews in the U.S. Found the need to take responsibility for our community and say, look, there's a lot of disagreements in our community about what the best way is to go about stopping the violence, stopping civilians from being killed, Palestinians from being killed, stopping the dehumanization that Israeli soldiers face and the violence that they face as well in Israel-Palestine. And a lot of Jews came together to say, we might disagree on some things, but we can all agree that the occupation is horrible. It's a nightmare for everyone who lives under it and who administers it. So let's get together and move our community, make sure people have the right education and can take direct action to end our community's support for the occupation. And we've been a movement for many years. Obviously, Trump's presidency has changed a lot of our focus with so much white nationalism rising in the US. And more recently, over the past couple of years, we've done more election work, seeing how electoral campaigns and elections are really great opportunities to push our message, to build our base, and to help the right candidates win, who can move this issue in the right direction.
Great, awesome. So tell us about what IfNotNow has been doing in Georgia with the 2 Senate races or runoff races, right?
Yeah. So. Our movement's been invited by local organizations like the New Georgia Project to come and support, first and foremost, with canvassing, right? If anyone wants to get involved who's watching and really wants to go be in Georgia and knock doors, you can come COVID safely, if you have take the right precautions through Seed the Vote. They're an amazing organization that's placing volunteers in Georgia. If you just Google Seed the Vote, you can get more information about coming here, especially if you're in the region and want to plug in. And we're here through Seed the Vote and through the New Georgia Project to knock on doors, make sure voters know about this election. And I think the really exciting thing about us being a Jewish movement being here is that Kelly Loeffler, right, and Purdue, they're using a lot of false accusations of anti-Semitism to try to bring down their opponents. They're accusing Warnock and Ossoff, hilariously, who is Jewish, they're accusing them of anti-Semitism because they criticize Israel sometimes, just like any country that's criticized that needs to be brought to terms on their human rights abuses, like any country in the world. Warnock and Ossoff have the right to do that. And of course, the Loeffler and Perdue are using the classic GOP strategy of divide and conquer, using Jews, pitting us against non-Jewish, marginalized people of color, Black, Indigenous folks, to say, oh no, these folks, these progressive candidates aren't friends of the Jews. They're spouting anti-Semitism, and you shouldn't vote for them. You should vote for us, which is hilarious, of course, because the GOP is the real party of anti-Semitism. They're the ones spreading conspiracies about QAnon, about George Soros and the liberal globalist elites. Those conspiracies are actually killing Jews, right? We know that shooters like the Pittsburgh shooter a couple years ago who shot up 11 people in a synagogue, they're the ones being inspired by the right wing's hatred and conspiracy theories. So we're here to say, no, Jews have a different message. We're actually very supportive of Warnock and of Ossoff. Don't believe the right about their accusations of anti-Semitism. And we're proud Jews who support progressive candidates. You don't have to worry about anti-Semitism if you want to support these candidates.
Right. The race over in Georgia is really important for obvious reasons. We want to take away the power from the Republican Party because they have been disastrous when it comes to just the COVID response. They're very irresponsible. They have driven their agenda of hate and corporatism, and this race is very important. Yes, we're trying to get the power back to hopefully a different Democratic Party. We won't know that until we see when they get going. But it's very important that we cannot continue this same direction that is hurting, the entire, world really by their policies. So this is crucial. Where are we right now in Georgia with these elections?
Yeah, the polls are extremely close, and early voting ends just in a few days on the 31st. We know early voting is a really crucial time to make sure that voters have the right to vote, who maybe have to work or take care of children on election day. So we have a few days to really make all the phone calls and door knocking COVID safely possible to make sure people know where they can vote, right? And historically in the South, especially Black folks here in the South have been disenfranchised for generations. And so that's why it's so important to make sure we're getting the word out through these grassroots local organizations to make sure that people are turning out. We have lots of early vote, and we can flip Georgia just like we did in the generals. But it's not guaranteed. It's really going to take so much more voter outreach over the next, 8 days or so.
Yeah, have you heard anything about difficulties with voting? Because our viewers may not know this, but I've been living in Atlanta for the past 4 years. Even though I'm in California right now, I've been there for my PhD program. And when I first applied for an absentee ballot for the primaries, my ballot never arrived and I had to go vote in person. So have you heard anything, anybody having difficulties getting access to a ballot?
Yeah, so I think luckily there's enough people here on the ground doing work to ensure that voting happens. It happens democratically and safely, where people who want to vote are getting help to vote. I think that just the circumstances we're in, living under a pandemic with a massive economic recession, it's making it hard for a lot of voters I talk to find the time and the transportation and getting time off work in order to go vote. That's the real issue here, is that even just the brutality of the economics right now, the lack of a stimulus bill is part of voter disenfranchisement. When you have people who don't want to, have to make the decision between, am I going to work or get fired to go vote, or who's going to take care of my kids when I can't even send them to childcare, when it doesn't feel safe to have a babysitter or I can't afford it. So really that's the story of disenfranchisement right now. It's economics.
Yeah, I think that makes, go ahead, Carlos.
I say it's really tough. And I think that there's a lot of people that are really feeling the pain economically. And what we are seeing, at least what we see from the news medias here, is long lines already. People trying to get out there. But we also hear of issues, not enough polling places and all this stuff that they do to suppress vote. Those are real things. These are very real things. How are the people responding, in your opinion? Do you see any kind of trends happening right now? Are people scared? Do you think they driven to the polls because economically they're hurting really bad? Uh, this is reality that we live in. This pandemic crisis has affected people of color more than anyone else. So, what is the feel? What's trending out there? What's happening? How do you see the people responding?
Sure. So when I go in and knock on doors, I'm first of all hearing a lot of excitement about, yes, we've heard about this election. We know how important it is. While at the same time, mixed emotions of no matter who gets elected, and even if we do flip the Senate, will things really change, for us? Will our communities that have been historically underserved, the Democratic Party hasn't cared about as much? Will people actually still come here, even after the election to support us? Will there be community organizing afterwards? And that's the beauty of having election work paired with grassroots organizing. I think it's a really amazing innovation that groups like Seed the Vote are bringing to the election years, where, yes, it's important to send out-of-state volunteers, but we want to make sure that's tied to grassroots organizing so people can not just elect the right politicians, but then hold them accountable once they're in office and make sure they pass the stimulus bills. So I think people here are feeling, a mixture of, yes, we need to vote, and, the battle isn't over on January 5th. We need to keep fighting, and we need support to keep fighting. Don't forget about us.
Right, exactly. Especially if we want more of the right kinds of people voting, which are the people that you're saying who cannot show up because they have to work, or that they can't sacrifice getting paid, right? So we definitely have to hold those elected officials accountable, and especially Warnock and Ossoff, I think really need to have a lot of pressure on them from the progressive movement and progressive organizations, because they are not actual progressive candidates. They're fairly centrist candidates who don't support Medicare for all, who are unwilling to openly say that they even support a $15 minimum wage. So even though they are 100% better than Perdue and Loeffler, we still need to get a lot more out of them. So it's great to see the grassroots organizations being brought in like this in the way that yours is.
Thank you so much. And it's exciting this year that I think us who are part of the progressive left and grassroots organizations and progressive campaigns, we're proving to the Democratic establishment, hey, we're helping you actually win your elections. I worked with Rashida Tlaib's campaign this year, and we were one of the only groups really door knocking in Michigan. Biden's team had some fear around door knocking, which we understood, but also Rashida knew her community and knew that it was okay to door knock safely, and we did it safely. And we turned out, tens of thousands of voters in Detroit that really helped flip Michigan for Biden. And I think whether or not Biden remembers that, once he's in office in a few weeks, we're going to be there to make sure, hey, we're a powerful force to be reckoned with. The young progressive left movements that are finally getting more and more power in affecting elections, we're here to stay. And if you want our support, you're going to have to move on our progressive policies. But we know that, the right needs to be beat. And during elections, it's important to just stand together and make sure that the right has no chance of, spreading their hatred that affects us so deeply, all of our communities. We need to make sure that they're not in office.
Right. I mean, clearly important is to be able to show the grassroots strength. And that's what we are doing election after election. So whether Biden does the right thing or not, and we hope he does, so far, I'm not impressed with the people that he's picking in his cabinet, except for one. But again, what we got to remember as grassroots, as progressive, is that when we come together, this is where strength is in. When we mobilize people on the ground, it goes to show to the establishment that they need to be careful, because if they keep pushing us away, we're going to come and start taking their seats. Something really interesting that's happening even in New York, where the Democratic Party chair in New York is issuing, warnings to Ocasio about running against Schumer. But look, the thing is that if they're not going to do their job, we're going to do ours. And the people are tired, fed up. And this is why the voters in Georgia, a lot of them have second thoughts whether they should even consider the Democratic Party, is because the Democratic Party has for a long time forgotten the people. They have left them behind. They get elected and then they go back to their ways of, pretty much serving the lobbyists and corporations. We're tired of that. And people are on the ground, people, organizations like yours, knocking on doors, because we know that we have the strength. The strength of the grassroots movement of progressive is in the grassroots, is in the people. It's us coming together.
Yeah, and that just makes me so excited actually for the moment we're entering, where yes, Biden is no Bernie. We all know that. But it still is a big difference from Trump, and our organization, just like many progressive organizations, are re-strategizing of what's possible actually under a Biden administration that wasn't possible before. Where can we put more pressure, especially for our issue related to ending the occupation and moving our community. Under Trump was just really pandering to evangelicals. That was his main base when he was thinking about Israel. He, of course, talked about Jews and used us as if he was doing, his actions towards Israel for the Jewish people. But it's very clear that he was doing everything for the evangelicals. And he even spoke to that towards the end of his term, just admitting flat out, yeah, you Jews don't even like me. You Jews don't even appreciate what I do for you. And it's an exciting time for our organization to think, how can we actually maybe, take more power back and push Biden on things like conditioning aid, right? Making sure that the occupation won't happen and Israel can't uphold it while just getting a blank check from America every year, right? How will we hold the government accountable and move people like Kamala Harris and Biden on an issue that the left has moved much more progressive than they're at right now?
Yeah, and I really like your perspective in saying, well, what can we do now under a Biden administration that we couldn't do under a Trump administration? Because I know it's very easy for us to start to feel very cynical or very negative about the political environment. But in order for us to actually move forward, we have to find those silver linings, right? Those areas in which we can, squeeze ourselves in, like the little cracks that we can push ourselves through to get our agenda into law, or to make the changes that we want to see happen. So I really appreciate what you're saying, because even for myself, I also start to feel a little jaded. But I mean, it's important to kind of get that perspective on things. So I was wondering if you could, not now, if you want to stay and talk about more about this, that's totally fine. But I'm also very excited, Carlos and Elias, about the confrontation that IfNotNow members had with Kelly Loeffler. Do we want to talk about that now, or would you like to stay on this topic at the moment?
I'd be happy to talk about it, sure, unless you all want to talk about it more.
Carlos, anything else? Yeah?
Heard enough. We understand what the issues are right now, where the focus is, and what's happening on the ground. But we want to hear from those stories that you have, because it's important for us to know really details that a lot of times are not reported on mainstream media.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks for the platform to do that.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. So you were telling us that a couple of members went to a Loeffler rally and after a very reasonable question, and you got it recorded. So I was wondering if you could go ahead and share the video with us now, and maybe give us a little bit more background on what happened and how they were able to meet Loeffler and ask this question of her.
Sure, I'd be happy to. Yeah, so some context in case you're not as familiar with Loeffler's history of white supremacy and anti-Semitism, is that, for a long time, she's really trafficked in these conspiracy theories that pit Jews as the controllers of the world, right? And it's the same stuff that was, ripe in the Holocaust and in, mass murders of my people for many many hundreds of years that sent my grandfather to Auschwitz. These theories that Jews control the world, and in a way to distract people who are marginalized from the real people who are in power and who are controlling the world, which is people like Loeffler, right? The wealthy, business elite in this country, the white ruling class. Senator Loeffler has extreme wealth, is married to the head of Wall Street. And she uses these anti-Semitic tropes to distract us and to blame Jews for issues. So we wanted to confront her, especially after she's been seen taking pictures with known neo-Nazis and former Klan members, and using tropes like, calling Chuck Schumer, a Jewish Congress member, globalist, a liberal elite in New York. We all know those are dog whistles about Jews. So we went to her campaign rally here in Georgia with some Jews here, and we said, "Hi, Senator. Why do neo-Nazis love you so much?" We're curious. So let's watch the video and see what happens.
Absolutely. All right. So just waiting for it to pop up, then we'll play it. So, I don't actually see it. Oh, there it is. Okay, perfect. So, okay, let me just remove the phone banking so that we can see the full screen. All right, awesome. So go ahead and hit play.
Okay, I'll turn up my volume too, if that helps.
Yeah, hopefully. Yeah.
Why do you think that neo-Nazis love your campaign so much? Why do you think that? Because white supremacists are really attracted to your campaign, and because you're inspiring politics that inspires racist and white supremacist violence.
Senator Loeffler, why do neo-Nazis love your campaign?
You're inspiring white supremacist and anti-Semitic violence that targets Jews like me and people of color.
That's great.
Yeah, so you saw what happens, right? She says she's friendly. She says, "Hi, thank you for coming to my event." The senator says hi. And as soon as we asked the question, she froze up and she was silent, and she had her bodyguards, her campaign staff, remove us forcibly to the woman, Ray, who was asking the question. Just get out of my event. We don't even want to engage with this because we know it's a losing street. When people are silent, it means that there's hiding something, right? And it just goes to show that she's happy to use us, when it's useful for her campaign, but she won't actually talk to us. And it's, there's tens of thousands of views now on Twitter, and people are seeing her true colors when it comes to, how she actually supports Jews.
Oh.
Wow. Yes. It's really interesting how much Republicans wrap themselves in this faux support of Jews by supporting the government of Israel, and somehow they equate supporting the state of Israel with supporting Jews, which is also really an insult to Jews everywhere, because it's again saying that Jews are a monolith, right? Oh, if you're Jewish, you must love Israel. You must support Netanyahu, right? You must, support keeping Palestinians in a cage, on a little piece of land. And it's nice and refreshing to kind of like stick it to her like that. So what gave you guys the idea to do this and to confront her like that?
Yeah, and thanks, Margot. That's really well put. Exactly what you said. It's really insulting and offensive and anti-Semitic, actually, when we're always conflated with Israel. Israel is a country with obviously a lot of Jewish connections, but every Jewish person has a different relationship to Israel, and a nationality that sometimes is Israeli and sometimes isn't. Right? I'm an American.
Yeah.
I wasn't born in Israel, and when I've asked Republicans about anti-Semitism, like we've talked to her, we've talked to Donald Trump Jr., Republican Steve Scalise. We've asked them all about their neo-Nazi, ties or anti-Semitism. They always say, "But I love Israel." It's their go-to defense card. And it's very telling of their strategy that we're starting to just show everyone their true colors. And I'm sorry, I forgot your question. What did you ask me?
Oh, I was just wondering what inspired your organization to create this confrontation with her. Was it totally spontaneous, or was it strategic? I mean, of course, that's perfect either way, but just curious.
Yeah, it's a combination of both, of spontaneously deciding, let's go to events and let's ask candidates real questions. Let's speak truth to power and make them talk about the things that they actually don't want to talk about, right? No politician should have a reason to be silent about an issue. What's there to hide, right? If you know your stances, if you know that you're not a neo-Nazi, that you don't have ties with neo-Nazis, you should be able to just confidently say, I don't have ties with neo-Nazis. But when you actually speak truth to power like this and talk to a candidate live, it can really bring out their real opinions. And it comes from a long tradition, a long lineage of this tactic called bird dogging, which I'm a huge fan of. I love this tactic. And one of the first times that I saw bird dogging was from the Nashville student sit-ins. Here in the South in Tennessee, when you had segregated Nashville, where Black people weren't allowed to sit at lunch counters with other white young people with white families in Nashville, and the white mayor was somewhat on the fence about the issue, right? And as they were building popular support for their movement through their sit-ins, through having so much violence being done on them by white people. You remember all the classic photos, right, of people pouring their milkshakes and beating lunch counter sit-ins. Eventually, one young activist went up to the mayor and said on live TV, "Mayor, do you believe that it's moral to continue segregation?" And it was broadcasted live, and he had no choice but to say on TV, "You know what? I don't think it's moral. I do think that it's right to desegregate." And it was that moment, right? Some people call it a gotcha moment, but it's not about tricking someone. It's about forcing politicians to actually be accountable to their citizens, to their constituents. And unless we have the camera on them, unless we bring a camera to an event and ask them the question that they should be answering already in their legislation, they're not going to change. We know that. Even the best politicians need public pressure, right? It's like LBJ saying, "Hey, Martin Luther King, make me do it. I believe in your civil rights struggle, but make me do it by being out there in the streets, putting pressure on me." So I think bird dogging is a really great, safe, legal, democratic way to put pressure on politicians. And it's one of my favorite tactics.
Awesome. So have you done, you said you were in Rashid Tlaib's campaign. Have you volunteered through IfNotNow and other electoral campaigns in the past year or a couple years or X number of years?
Yeah, so one of my first great experiences doing campaign work connected with IfNotNow was actually with Bernie. We started a group called Jews for Bernie, where we kind of just said, look, there's so many different groups organizing their communities, their religious groups, their ethnic groups around supporting Bernie. And we want to make sure that Jews know all about Bernie, know how great he is, know that even if he has criticisms of Israel, he still is a proud Jew who loves the Jewish people and who has a connection with Israel as well. And we need to make sure that Jews understand that. So with the campaign, IfNotNow and the Bernie campaign work together to put out a video, to put on canvases. And it showed me that campaigns aren't just a place to elect someone. It's actually a way to build movements. If people can get really excited about a candidate or about beating a candidate, like here in Georgia, it can bring in young people to do election work, which is sometimes easier than activist work. When we think of activism, we often think of having to go to a protest with a sign or chain ourselves to a building, which are all great tactics. But sometimes it's nice to just be able to do some door knocking and phone calling for an election to get people involved with a movement. And having an inspiring figure like Bernie, who we called Zaidi Bernie, which in Yiddish, a language of many Jews, just means grandfather. We called him Zaidi Bernie, just like people called him Tio Bernie, right? So we called him Zaidi, and he loved to talk about his Jewishness with us, and it was a really special connection for our movement.
Right. It's so important to, when we do things, to be strategic, to do things not just because you want to do it, because it's the exotic thing to do, or that, we have to think about how all this affects not only the short term, but long term. Being able to be part of the Bernie campaign was important to us because we not only learn a lot of things, but we connected with people. And I had a saying that say, get Bernie elected and stay connected. See, that's the key. If we stay connected, even if we lose the campaign, but we stay connected, that's power right there. Because now we are numbers. And when we have numbers, we have people that are visionary, people that are creators of content and strategic planning and et cetera, et cetera. That's where everything comes into play. All these pieces come together. So for you guys, and I heard a lot about Jews for Bernie, was very important, also strategic, because you have a mission as an activist, you have issues that you're fighting for, and this is what brought us together to Bernie, is the issues. There's a lot of issues that we all fighting for, that we concerned about, that keeps us up at night, whether it be climate change, whether it be human rights violations, whether it be corruption in elections, whatever that your issues may be, to the audience, is that this is what brings us together, are the issues. We have something in common. All of us are in this thing together. And today, more than ever, just like in Georgia, it's a really battleground for politics right now. That's the place to be. That's the zone. This is going to determine what's going to happen decades from now. This election is very important, but it is even equally important to stay connected, to keep doing what we're doing. And that's what you guys are doing.
Thank you, Carlos. Yeah, I appreciate that.
It reminds me, we've only been doing this show for a little while, but we've had so many people from different backgrounds come on and talk with us, and I get the sense that this vision that that Reverend Jesse Jackson had about this Rainbow Coalition is really starting to come to fruition. We're really seeing people from all different backgrounds really understanding that we have to be united in order to make this happen, to address all of these difficult issues. And it's just so exciting to be able to connect with you, Elias, and to connect with everybody else, and see how much we are all on the same page here. So just, don't know if you feel similar, if you've gotten that sense that we're really, there's something, I feel like there's something special going on now, like with BLM and everything that's been happening recently. There's definitely something in the air, even though we're living some very difficult times. I don't know if you've felt anything similar or seen anything like that.
Yeah, well, thanks for bringing up the Rainbow Coalition symbol, because I think it reminds me that a lot of what I was told growing up in media or at school was about the great American melting pot, right? That we'd all kind of melt together to form some kind of homogenous stew. And I think while there is a vision there of peace, which is important, and equality, what that's missing is like the pieces of the rainbow that actually get to be different, while all making up something unified. And that's been the power for me of Jewish organizing. For a while, I was really into progressive politics and the left and organizing, but I always showed up as an ally, as a white guy being like, hey, I can help you. I'm just here to help. Don't worry about me. I don't have much of a story. And eventually I was working with people who said, well, who are you? Like, what's your story? You always ask me questions about me. I was actually doing a lot of immigration work, and I was learning a lot about Latinx culture and liberation theology. And I grew up by the Mexican border in San Diego. And I was just learning a lot about immigration issues. And I had these really wonderful immigrant friends who said, well, tell me about you though, Elias. And eventually, I did do some Jewish rituals with them, and they really appreciated seeing a bit of who I was and my ancestry and my story. And it's what brought me into Jewish organizing, into being like, oh, I can actually fight for my own liberation as a Jew against, like, let's say Kelly Loeffler, for example, these people who are trying to kill us. And it's not just about fighting for myself, though. It's about fighting for everyone. And that's where the name If Not Now comes from. It's a quote from Rabbi Hillel's. He says, if I'm not for myself, who will be for me? If I'm only for myself, though, who am I? If not now, when? Right? The time is now. That's the urgency piece. But it's about being for others and ourselves. And I think this moment is really special, where we can't just make fun of identity politics anymore. A lot of people will just say, oh, identity politics, PC culture, whatever. No, like Black Lives Matter was probably, like you said, Margot, like it's the biggest movement of all time in the US this year. You can't argue with that people standing up as Black people is really powerful, but it doesn't mean there isn't room for us all to stand up in our identities. So I'm wondering, I don't know if I'm allowed to do this, to ask you two questions, but I'm wondering what identities are important to you two in your work as activists, community organizers, journalists, that are important to you that you come to the work with, because I'd love to hear about that. I think the world should know about, our different identities we bring with us.
Carlos, would you like to go ahead?
We actually were talking a little bit about identity politics this morning, and you know how here in California, the first Latino got chosen to represent for Senate, Kamala Harris seat, Alex Padilla, and people celebrating that he's the first Latino for this position. But look, what's important to me, yes, I love being, who I am, but I'm a human, you know, and when I see people hurting, I don't care what color they are. When I see people being thrown out to the streets, evicted, I never ask, are you a Republican? Are you a Democrat? What's your nationality? What's your religion? Those things are not important to me. What is important is the pain of the people, how people are hurting right now. And there is the right and the wrong. There is life and death. There is, good and evil. There is, there is no middle ground in these things, because this is where politicians love to play us, is to divide us, to put us against each other, is to push for personal agendas, instead of, if you're running for office, you are there to represent everyone, not just the people that you like or the people that speak well of you. I have always said, it's important for politicians to sit down at the table with people that don't like them, because that's how we learn about each other. And that's how we learn about the struggles of other people. And I think that what we are seeing right now in this age is that people are waking up. People are realizing that the pain that the Black people are feeling is the same pain that we feel it, maybe in different ways, but we feel your pain. It is wrong. You know what I mean? That you will have to literally be scared of driving down the street because you're going to get killed by the police. It's just plain wrong. So for me, it's being able to identify the pain of the people, the suffering of the people, and be able to do something about it. Not because of the color of your skin or, again, of your religion. I'm a former pastor of a church, and people like, look at me, really, it's like, you're supposed to be a Republican, but it's like, no, I'm a humanist. I love people. And if we learn anything from the Bible, is that we are supposed to love one another, not judge one another. There's so much to say about that in itself, but we have to make sure that we see the world, with the eyes of, all of us are in this together, and the suffering of one is the suffering of another. And we have to do a step in and do whatever it takes to bring, relief to people that are suffering right now, whether it be Palestine, whether it be people in South America, whether it be people at the border, whether it be people in Skid Row here in downtown, where a lot of homeless encampments are. You know what I mean? None of those things are acceptable. People have a right to live. And that's what we're fighting for. That's what I'm fighting for.
Yes, Carlos is a man of the people. Well, as for myself, I mean, I guess I come from an interfaith background, so both an environment of both Jewish and Catholic upbringing, I guess. But I mean, I primarily identify as Jewish, and my background is, from Mexico. My family came here from Mexico, so I bring a lot of that kind of mixture of identity with me and carry it around with me. I don't really discuss it a lot publicly. This is probably the most public discussion I've had about it, but it's always there, and it does shape my perspective. I agree with Carla. It's important not to also get hung up on our identity too much, because we are united as a people by our commonalities as well, and the fact that we all care about the same issues, justice for all, human rights, just the basic things. We're only asking for very basic things. I think that's really important. So that definitely shapes. But I think the fact that I learned about other people's identities, about other people's cultural backgrounds, in the same way that you were talking about, Elias, has been more shaping for me, I think, than even my just coming from my own background. Like, for example, I've been living in Georgia for 4 years, and I volunteered on a campaign that ran in the jungle primary that led to this runoff for Warnock and Kelly Loeffler. And I volunteered on this campaign for someone named Tamara Johnson-Shealy. She ran on a very bold Black agenda, reparations. And in working with her, I learned so much about the struggles of the Black community in the South, and how important it was to really not just be like a passive ally, but to really engage, to own those issues as well, and to say, yes, reparations are so important for African Americans, for people who are descendant of slaves. And I have to also be an advocate for that. I can't just be somebody who shows up at their events and be like, oh yeah, we're doing this thing around reparations. But I also have to actively say to people, reparations are important. We need it for this reason and that reason. And even though I'm not a Black person, I will benefit if they get this justice. So I think that's something that shapes me even more, just learning about everybody's cultures and seeing how we are really united. There's these differences are so superficial. So I think that shapes me more than anything. But thank you for asking us this question.
Yeah, I really appreciate hearing about that. And yeah, it makes me think a lot about leadership too, because I think some of the misconceptions or dangers of identity politics can be that certain people should be leaders and certain people shouldn't. That certain people, right, are the only ones who can lead on an issue. And I think for me, it's about, well, what's your community that you're leading in? So, for example, I don't think as a white person, I should necessarily be a leader in the Black Lives Matter movement, speaking on behalf of Black Lives Matter, organizing Black Lives Matter protests as a Black person. But I have a role to play in my white community as a leader, kind of like you were saying, Margot, of being an advocate, not just showing up to their things, but saying, hey, like white friends and family, hey, my own self, looking in the mirror as a white person and being like, well, how can I take leadership on this issue? Because it's not the role of a Black person to lead all of us white people, into figuring out our stuff to get more free. All of us need to get more free. And I think I've learned slowly that there are things that I can take leadership on. And it relates to the issue that we started talking about with IfNotNow and Israel-Palestine. I'm not Palestinian, but it doesn't mean that Jews can't take leadership to say, we do need to have new ideas and campaigns to move our communities to end this, brutality. So I appreciate that. And the humanism framework too, it's just, I think we're starting to see with our issue, we've talked a lot about, should there be one state? Should there be two states? What's the future of the region? But what would it look like to just have a human rights framework? I think a lot of people are getting excited about that framework to say, let's just make sure we're all aligned here on the human rights abuses happening there, around the world, in our own backyards. And if we have a framework around human rights, we can value everyone's lives. We don't have to value certain lives over others, because we're all humans. We're all made from the same flesh, whatever God we worship or don't worship. So I feel excited about that framework too, Carlos.
Right. It's very important for us to work with people that are suffering. And I say it like that because, there is some things that may be good in certain communities. But as long as there is suffering by a people, we cannot ignore that. And we need to pay attention to that. Whether it's Palestine, whether it's the Black people here in America, or gays. if people are being targeted and people are suffering and people are dying and people are economically, ripped off and raped, you know what I mean, and their wealth is stolen from them, we have the moral obligation, as leaders, to step in and do something about it. Whether it is offering support to those that are leading the efforts of fighting against those issues, or whether it's us taking the lead because no one else is doing it. I think that we live in those times right now where we have to step up. We have to step our game. We have to put our differences aside, and we have to look to where the great suffering is taking place and act on it and mobilize other people, educate the public, do whatever it's going to take. That's what we're supposed to be doing. That's why I chose to step into this form of activism rather than staying in the church, pastoring a flock that becomes more of a social gathering. You know, it's like I want to be up there where the people is. I want to be able to talk to my brother and sister that have no place to rest, that is living in fear. You know, it's very important because not only it makes us better human beings, but it improves the community. It helps our future. It helps the future of our kids. I have 4 children. I call them children. They're adults already, but they're my kids, and this is the world that we have. That we have put together. That is pretty bad world. You know, and I'm scared for them. I'm concerned. Let me put it that way. I'm concerned for their future. If they decide to have children, for their future. So a fight for Black people is a fight for ourselves as well. We all learn from this. And when someone is doing good, everybody does good. And that's the way it's supposed to be. I want to make sure that our Native Americans, are given the respect that they took away from them, and make sure that they are being taken care of. And as long as they are not, we have something to say. And they have problems with us as well, because our brothers and sisters out there are continue to be, ripped off, and killed many times. So we need to step our game going into 2021 and learning putting all these things together that we have learned over the years, and do something for the greater good of all the people.
Elias, so I have 2 directions that I want to go and try to decide which one. So you talked a little bit about Palestine and taking this human rights perspective. What do you think going forward? What are the prospects for really righting the wrongs in Palestine? Do you have any thoughts? Is IfNotNow working? Have plans for 2021 and going forward to try to right these wrongs, stop these human rights violations?
Yeah, thanks for asking. And we're at a point in our movement, I kind of talked about it earlier, like a lot of movements where we're trying to analyze the terrain, and see, okay, a lot's changing right now, especially with a Trump presidency. What's possible going forward under Biden? Where is the movement for Palestinian rights in Palestine, in Israel, and in America right now? I think everyone's kind of just recuperating from all the blows from the past 4 years, between the embassy being moved, between Trump's just hatred, honestly, towards not just towards Jews, towards Palestinians, and using Israelis in the name of his own interests. And we're trying to listen, obviously, to Palestinian voices, and we're doing a lot of consultation over the next few months with Palestinian and Israeli leaders, with other American Jews and organizations, to try to see what's the opportunity. Because the way that we think about strategy is movements are part of a bigger ecology, like an ecosystem where everyone's playing their part. And what can we take responsibility for if we see a gap, right? If we see that, oh, Jews aren't doing this right now, how can we come in and make sure that, we take responsibility and to take action in that part to complete the ecosystem, to do whatever we can to change the conditions on the ground. And for me personally, I feel a lot of excitement about what the American Jewish community can keep doing if we keep changing. From a level of, like Carlos mentioned, on an education level, right? A lot of young Jews are still being miseducated about Israel, about Palestine, about Palestinians, being taught to hate our neighbors rather than to love our neighbors. So I think it always goes back to education and moving our communities. So we change the youth programming, right? So folks learn about the realities, the complicated and harsh realities that is our world. We can't hide that from kids anymore. And I think also as well, we need to look towards politics, because whatever America does in terms of supporting or not supporting Israel has a huge effect over whether or not they'll continue, expanding the occupation, continue settling in the, in the occupied territories. So I feel a lot of excitement about the ability to change course a bit and be flexible. Since we're a movement, it doesn't mean that we always have to keep existing. We should keep existing if we're actually needed. So we're in a point of re-strategizing and deciding what's the best role for us to play in our community.
Great. Carlos, do you have a question for Elias right now?
No, well,
before I take over.
So no, my concern right now is where do we go from here, and how can people get involved? What do we need to do in Georgia? It's very important. This election, like we've been saying, is super important, But how can people get involved?
Yeah, so glad you asked about that, Carlos. And so first of all, we have phone banks every Monday night where you can call from anywhere in the world and join us at 6 p.m. Eastern, and you'll be joining, Jewish Georgians and our allies in calling up Georgia voters who need to hear. And yeah, you just got the link. It's right there in your live stream, I believe. Thank you, Margot, for posting that. Click on that link. You can sign up. It takes about 30 seconds, and you'll get to register for a phone bank. You'll join a Zoom call. You can join from your phone or computer. It's helpful to have a computer and a phone for phone banking. And you'll be trained by some wonderful IfNotNow members about how to phone bank, calling up folks who maybe don't know where their election site is, where their polling site is, or they didn't know that early voting's already started and they can vote, the next day. So come join right now. I hope some folks right now are clicking on that link, signing up for 6 p.m. tomorrow night Eastern. And you can also go to that link if you're in Georgia, right? Maybe you're a friend of Margot's in Atlanta, or you know someone in Georgia. If you go to that link, you can press another link in the description for getting involved locally. And it doesn't matter if you're a Jew or you just want to be an ally of us fighting against, the white supremacy of Loeffler's campaign. You can join us for in-person canvassing. We're totally COVID safe. We provide masks and face shields, and we go out social distance. You drive yourself, or you can go with someone in your pod or in your household, and we knock on doors. We get lists from local organizations like the New Georgia Project and Seed the Vote, and we go knock on doors. So I really hope you'll click on that link. Whether you live in California or Georgia, you can join our movement and make a difference to make sure that we elect Warnock and Ossoff and flip the Senate.
And one last question for you, Elias. So to encourage people to do this, can you tell us a little bit about your experience door knocking and phone banking? I mean, is it fun? Is it hard? I mean, what's it like? Do you get a script? Can you tell us a little bit about what it's been like for you to do it?
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for asking that. I know that some people have done it a million times. Some people have never done it and are a bit wary of calling someone they've never met before. But I keep doing it because I have great experiences. I think for me, a lot of why I do my activism, honestly, is that it's social. It's fun. It's how I build community and meet people who are like-minded and share the same values. That's something that's always been important to me. And so my favorite part of phone banking and canvassing is meeting the other volunteers, getting to spend time with people who want to, win the same fights that we all want to win, and talking to voters. And the ones who want to talk to you are all really great people, because they're there to say, oh yeah, I do want to learn more about the election. And part of the script is that we give you a full script where you get to know the candidates more. You talk to them, the voter, about what issues are important to them, and then you confirm that they're supportive of our candidates if they haven't heard of them. And what I love about the script is that we ask them, what issue is important to you, right? We always ask that, because we don't want to just come into a community and tell them what matters and tell them to vote. We want to hear from them, like Carlos going on Skid Row and hearing from people of, well, what's actually affecting you right now in LA? What do you need? What do you care about? We listen to them, and then we connect the dots between what they're interested in and why progressive values matter and why progressive candidates will help, not do everything. We still need to organize, but will be a little, grain of salt or a little grain of sand in the bigger ocean in order to actually make change on an issue. So we listen, we affirm, and we share our information that a lot of people just don't have right now because of voter suppression. So I love it. It's very social. Come hang out, come join a call, come join a canvas with us.
And is there anything else that we didn't touch on that you would like to discuss or say about If Not Now, or about the work that you've been doing, or anything interesting that has happened to you as an organizer?
No, I just really hope that everyone can find their movement home. I feel so lucky to have found my movement home, my community with If Not Now, a social movement that's really connected to my own story and passions. And I just hope everyone can find a place where they can really feel like they can make a difference in the world. I think that's the best cure for hopelessness, is finding that place where you find your own power. So I really appreciate the time to share my story, because I know that me hearing people's stories who were older than me, who were mentors, helped me find my own place. And I just hope we can all, as progressives, keep helping young people find their own home in where they have agency and can make change however they want to make change. There's so many ways to get involved and make change, and so many movements growing, whether that's getting involved with your local DSA or Black Lives Matter chapter, or maybe just mutual aid in your neighborhood, starting a community garden. Anything like that is such a wonderful way to connect with people. So I just wish, in 2020, 2021, that everyone finds that community that they want.
Thank you. Carlos, is there anything else you'd like to ask Elias?
No, I think I want to say thank you, because we always learn something from others, and today I learned some things from you. So I want to say thank you for the work that you guys have been doing over there. It's critical, it's important, but it's also part of growth. Is growing. The minute that we stop growing, the minute that we start expanding, we're in trouble. We need to continue to expand. We need to continue to grow. We need to continue to talk one to the other. So I want to commend you for the work that you guys are doing on the ground in Georgia, and for the people of Georgia, this is critical, because, and they are right, they are absolutely correct when they say, when they have this frame of mind thinking you only here for the election and then you forget us. What are you going to do for us, after the election? That's what the real work is. That's what we need to be paying the attention. And that's where we have to have firm commitments, not only short term, but long term. We are not going to come here and knock on your doors just because we want your vote. We want your support so that we can hear the community, that we can start healing, and we can start seeing and identifying those people that need the help. So thank you so much for having this conversation. And like I say, we're learning from one another.
Thank you so much, Carlos. Really pleasure to meet you. I hope to get to visit LA sometimes and come out with you, doing the service you do in your community.
Absolutely, Elias. Just, you have my number. If you're ever in town, just let me know, and I will let Carlos know. It'd be great. He's the man about town here. He knows everybody working in every single part, every little struggle or big struggle that exists. He knows who to talk to out here in California. So this has been. Oh, go ahead, Carlos.
Yes, and I always say this because we talked about it just earlier, and I'm gonna remind everybody that as long as you have breath, there is hope. There is hope, people. So, you are important. Whatever you may be watching this broadcast, you are so important. You are part of the movement. Even if you cannot go and drive and knock on doors, you can pick up the phone. You can just share a video. That's contributing to what needs to be done. So as long as there is breath, there is hope.
Yes, and this conversation has reminded me of another phrase: the people united will never be defeated. So I think as long as there's breath, there is hope. And so long as we're united, we shall not be defeated. So I think on these very positive notes, we should end the show and wish everybody a very good evening, a very good night. And just remind everybody that you've been watching Stand Up, Fight Back. I am Margot Paez, co-host with Carlos Marroquin, who is just below me here on the screen. And we've been having a really fascinating discussion with Elias Newman of IfNotNow. So just one last reminder that if you want to get involved with his organization, you can phone bank with them. And the website is listed here, right here below. And also we posted it in the chat. But of course, if you want to get involved more, you can just go to their website, ifnotnowmovement.org. So just a reminder, our show airs every Sunday. We are on at 10 a.m. Pacific time, 1 p.m. Eastern time. And we are also trying out the 6 p.m. Pacific time slot, which is 9 p.m. on the East Coast. So please join us. Please hit the subscribe button. Please share us, and please turn on the notifications so that you get our reminders, and tune in next week when we have another exciting guest. So everybody stay safe, have a great night, and wear a mask.